Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Massive drama today over the future name of Red Bull's sister team. It's not exactly the name we were expecting a few days ago. It's actually even worse. If you thought Stake F1 team Kick Sauber was bad, that they came up with it a little while ago, get a load of what Red Bull's marketing team have cooked up this time around. Also implying this potential move, a closer relationship between Red Bull and AlphaTauri. Zach Brown has been very critical of this relationship over the last few days. Mercedes, though, say they're not so concerned as long as the FIA actually stick to the rulebook. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. On the verge, I think, of 35,000 subs, so massively appreciate all the support over the last few days, given it's the off-season. Plenty to dive into, though, because Carlos Sainz Sr. today, or yesterday, won the Dakar Rally. 61 years of age, massively impressive, so congratulations to him and his team. But of course, he drives an Audi, and there's been rumours about potentially Carlos Sainz Jr. Could he follow in his footsteps, go and drive for Audi Formula 1? That may be necessary sooner rather than later, based on recent rumours around contract talks stalling between Sainz Jr. and Ferrari. There's been lots of talk that Sainz would like a 2-year extension with Ferrari. Ferrari more keen for maybe a 1-year deal. Santander, though, Spanish bank that sponsor Sainz, are trying to push the team for a slightly longer term deal. Will that happen though? Because now there's rumours that contract talks have basically come to a standstill as basically they work it out with Leclerc, right? For whatever Ferrari and Vasseur might say, it's quite clear that Leclerc is the man they want to build around, and Sainz is very much so a second priority in terms of getting his deal, renewed if they are going to do such a thing. But the likelihood is they might not, because there's been big rumours lately around other potential changes. Alex Albon has been linked to this team for quite a long time now, and even the other day there were new articles suggesting that Pierre Gasly might be an option for Ferrari as well if they can't get Albon and they don't decide to renew Carlos Sainz. So we'll see how that goes. But Sainz and Ferrari, there were rumours about a month and a half ago that they were kind of nearing a deal. That is now going nowhere, so maybe implications that they might be going down another potential direction here. So this is the whole situation for the teams next season. The first car launches are going to be February the 5th with Kick Sauber, Stake F1 team, we'll get into that in a second, Williams, and then it's still to be confirmed when Haas and also AlphaTauri, whatever they're going to be called next, are going to announce their cars and do all their reveals as well. But we know that AlphaTauri, okay, there were Toro Rosso back in the day. Initially they were Minardi, then it was Toro Rosso alongside Red Bull, then it was AlphaTauri for the last few years. Now they're going for new branding. People kind of wanted the Toro Rosso thing to return. That would have been nice, but it was quite clear they were going to go down the route to some extent of a naming deal. It's kind of like a necessary evil in Formula 1, where that's what the sponsors want to pay the money for, so it is what it is. Now, Sauber came up with this team name mid-December. We talked about it at the time being probably the worst ever Formula 1 team name in history. Stake F1 team Kick Sauber. It's bad, but I'll tell you, it is not as bad as what Red Bull have come up with here. Given the fact that Red Bull's marketing budget is not exactly small, I simply don't know how they've come up with this. It's a terrible look for everybody involved. I've yet to find a person that actually likes it. Maybe there's somebody watching this video that does. We'll get to that in a second. But you guys probably know, Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber had huge backlash as a result of this. So they actually, after late December, they said, okay, actually guys, we were just joking. That's not really our team name. And this is the team name. It's now just going to be Stake F1 Team, which is not great. I don't exactly love it by any means, but Stake F1 Team is a positively stellar name compared to what Red Bull have managed to cook up. So over the last few months, I would say, the main rumour was that it was going to be Visa and Cashapp sponsoring the team. Whether they were both going to be title sponsors, whether that was not going to be the case, was somewhat unclear, but it's a bit of a mess. Now, we then heard rumours a little while ago they were going to rebrand to Racing Bulls, which already is somewhat problematic. You've got Red Bull, you've got Racing Bulls, you've got Red Bull Racing, which is the main team, then you've got Racing Bulls, Red Bull Powertrains, Powers, it's an absolute mess from a naming perspective, but at least it's like a name of a car, right? You can call a car a Racing Bull, right? Because let's say you name your team this. Crofty can say, all right, there goes Daniel Ricciardo in the Racing Bull. There goes Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. There goes Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. There goes Lando Norris in the, McLaren. And it's the same type of thing. But if you don't have a clear name for what the car is going to be called, you run into a bit of a commentator's nightmare. And it's not just commentators that are affected by this, it's also everyone who watches the sport. But there were rumours going around over the last couple of days that actually it's not going to be called Visa Cashapp Racing Bulls. So we thought, okay, maybe, that's just some sort of error, and then, there's going to be some other title sponsors, or it's going to be done in a better way. But then we saw that they'd rebranded their Instagram here to Visa Cashapp RB. So presumably the RB standing for Racing Bulls. But, Visa Cashapp Racing Racing Bulls, kind of a long name, and especially if it's going to be Visa Cash App Racing Bulls Formula 1 team, which is even worse. But this was what they rebranded it as. Visa Cashapp RB. And then we saw also this, on X accounts, Twitter as I seem to still be calling it, Visa Cashapp RB F1, which is an X account that was created back in October. So the feeling was, okay, what's going on here? I guess RB just stands for Racing Bulls. But now the latest theory is that actually that's not the case. And Racing Bulls as an idea has now been dropped. Maybe they think it's too similar to Red Bull, which it is in the first place, which is why I don't like Racing Bulls. But their replacement is not to say, okay, yeah, Racing Bulls wasn't a great idea. Let's call it, Visa Cash App Toro Rosso. If it has to be, Visa Cash App, then at least go back and call it Toro Rosso or something with some branding or heritage, or at least you can say, there goes Sonoda in the Toro Rosso, right? As opposed to what is actually going to be, because the general feeling now is that it's not going to be Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, it's going to be Visa Cash App RB. That is literally going to be the team name. So, this is what Dado Boxer says in the replies, that his guess is that Visa Cash App RB will be the name. The RB part won't stand for Racing Bulls. I guess it will just stand for, Red Bull, really. But it's the Visa Cash App is basically the name of the team. In the same way that Stake F1 team is Stake F1 team, people are still going to call it Sauber, but it's kind of Stake. This is going to be the same deal, apparently, when it's Visa Cash App is the name of the team. So the general perception now seems to be that they've abandoned the idea of using Racing Bulls and they're going down a different route. Now, it's possible they might see the overwhelmingly negative community reaction here, like Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber did, and then change their name to something better. But if it's locked in, if the sponsorship deals are locked in, that doesn't seem especially likely. And we had lots of reaction to this, of course. My favourite Formula 1 teams are Ferrari and McLaren. What about yourself? Oh yeah, I support the Visa Cash App RB, as it will be, and Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber. This is what I'm kind of getting across, though, right, is that, sure, it might be Valtteri Bottas in the Stake, which is, it's not great, is it? Let's be honest. People might still say in the Sauber. That's what BBC said, that they will be referring to that team as Sauber, at least when it was called Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber. They might now have to call it Stake, but then again, different, let's say you're Sky or something. Are you going to call it Stake when, Sky have their own, Sky Bet betting platform? Stake is basically a betting company. Is that going to work? Are they just going to call it Sauber anyway? I don't know. That's a naming nightmare. But what are you meant to call the car? If it's a Racing Bull, sure, it's bad, but it's a Racing Bull. If it's an RB, what do they want them to call it? What if I'm Crofty, what do I call the car? Do I call it the Visa Cash App? Do I call it an RB? But then people are like, well, RB is Red Bull, RBR is Red Bull Racing. So it's just unbelievably confusing. And I thought there was a nice piece here actually on the race that Ed Straw wrote, just kind of analysing why he thinks this is so bad. And, it also signals, as he says, this is not a competitor to be taken seriously. It's hard to imagine that if Dietrich Mateschitz was still around, he would allow this to happen. Red Bull can call the team what it wants, but he also mentions, Ed Straw, that maybe there could have been pressure from Formula 1 themselves to, cut down on this, right? This perhaps reflects one of the weaknesses of the Liberty Media era, which is determined to sell F1's glitz and glamour, yet is apparently happy to have 10% of its actual product sound like it's a thrown-together operation that might briefly appear on the back of a British Touring Car Championship grid during a particularly moribund season. So, good analysis, I think, really. And it also implies, definitely, further collaboration between those two teams, between Red Bull Racing and its second team. The underlying team name, Racing Bulls, or RB, whatever, not only creates confusion, but also suggests it is less of an independent operation than ever, existing mainly as some kind of on-track billboard extension, which is, it's definitely a fair analysis. It's interesting, though, because the feeling is that AlphaTauri, I don't even know what I'm going to call it. What do I call it? RB? Racing Bulls? Red Bull's sister team? I'm not going to call it Visa Cash App, but it just doesn't work. I simply, this is so bad, I don't even know what to call it. At least the other teams, I had some idea where to go. So, yeah, whatever you want to call that second team, the feeling is that they're going to make big progress, right? That's a lot of the talk lately, that, oh yeah, they're using all the RB19 parts, they're going to crush it in the new season. But, it does seem like just a billboard extension that is probably not here to be taken particularly seriously, despite the fact that the collaboration between the two parties is getting closer than ever. And, they're moving their design operation to Milton Keynes campus, where Red Bull are also based. And I do think the key frustration here that people are getting across is just there's no identity there, right? I mean, it's effectively Red Bull 2 and selling the naming rights to the highest bidder, whereas at least when it was AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso, there was some sort of identity and name behind it. And that's a great shame, because it's a team populated by very accomplished, motivated and devoted talented people who have often punched above their weight since Red Bull bought the ailing team ahead of the 2006 season. They deserve better than this, and as do F1 as a whole and the fans. At a time of great opportunity for F1, this unimaginative name just signals don't bother to the wider world. And also, if I'm working for the team and I hear it being rebranded in this way, I don't feel like it's a massive signal for confidence for the organization. But yeah, that's what we believe is going to be the case. As I say, it may change if Red Bull see some of the reaction, because I saw some polls on this and I was seeing, 96, 97% of people saying they hated it. Stake F1 team kick Sauber, I didn't like that, but I wouldn't say I hated it. These are Cashapp RB. Like, hate is, a strong word that carries emotion, but I actually do think that I hate it. Like, it's that bad as far as I'm concerned. But of course, the other big part of this whole AlphaTauri, okay, whatever, I'll call it that for now, discussion with Red Bull is the relationship they're going to have on the engineering side and also potentially behind the scenes as well. They're moving a lot of their stuff to Milton Keynes, where Red Bull are based. There's also a general feeling that they will take kind of everything they can from the Red Bull RB19, or, everything that Red Bull are working on, AlphaTauri will take for next year's car, whatever it's going to be called. And as a result, they are going to be a fairly competitive outfit, right? We know there's been lots of discussion from Zak Brown, McLaren's CEO, over the last few days, and also rumours that behind the scenes, other teams agree with Zak on this discussion that it should no longer be allowed for Red Bull and AlphaTauri to basically be a thing, for Red Bull to own two teams for various reasons. We discussed it in depth the other day, and Zak Brown, of course, has given his thoughts on the matter. Now, other teams are likely to also agree with this assessment. Why would they want a team being able to take all the parts from the best team, especially under like an era of a cost cap and, when there's limits on development time and wind tunnel time, and there's people that will think, well, AlphaTauri, they're moving all their situation over to Red Bull's Milton Keynes situation. How can the FIA ensure that all of the wind tunnel time that's being used, or all of the testing, the simulation time, is appropriately being split between the two teams? Is it possible that one team is using some of the other team's resources? On paper, no, but it's a possibility, especially given how close that alliance is now going to be if the FIA aren't appropriately positioned to deal with it. And that, I think, is mainly Zak Brown's point of view, that it's a sporting problem. For the fairness of the sport, it makes sense if this, ceases to be over the next couple of years, as it probably will. I wouldn't be surprised if, come 2026, there's something in place that prevents the current relationship. Even if there's something still in place between Red Bull and that second team, I wouldn't be surprised if something comes in to restrict the level of the current relationship that they presently have. But actually, Mercedes seem less concerned by this, maybe just because they don't see AlphaTauri as so much of a threat. Like, if you're McLaren, you've been, upper midfield. Sure, at the moment they look like they're punching above their weight compared to where they've been for the last few years, and McLaren, of course, want to get back to winning championships most seasons if they at least can try and contend for them. But for the last few years, they've been in that kind of, third, fourth type, fifth position, such as that, trying to, fight their way forwards. And if AlphaTauri, I'm just going to do that for now, keep making progress, then McLaren are a team potentially at risk of losing to those guys. Mercedes are probably confident that they're never going to be concerned by the competition level of the Red Bull second team, although it always does matter, right? Because let's say one of the drivers has a qualifying situation that goes kind of poorly, or let's say they have to take a 5 or 10 place grid penalty for an engine change or something like that. You get stuck behind a Red Bull sister car that's actually kind of rapid. That might affect your potential championship fight. So I think teams in kind of the middle and lower fields will be more concerned about this relationship than Mercedes will. But nonetheless, James Allison gives his points and says, I'm not entirely sure what the nature of the relationships are between those two teams, but I am clear on what the rules say. And it is that other than the very limited part of the car where you are permitted to supply parts, and therefore a certain amount of technical data alongside those parts, in every other respect, the rules are very tight about not passing on anything that could be regarded as intellectual property from one team to another. The way that rule is written is very broad, very powerful, and it pretty much makes any communication not permitted, going on to say that the only areas they can really work is in marketing together, and I can't imagine they've done an especially good job on that, based on what we've talked about earlier today. If two teams have a strong relationship with each other, it can only really be a strong commercial relationship. It cannot be a strong technical or strong sporting relationship, because the rules forbid that. In the past, it was more open. The relationship that Mercedes enjoyed with the team that is now Aston Martin, at the time, that was a relationship that permitted much greater freedom than it does today. In response to that relationship, the rules were tightened up substantially to mean that you cannot really have a technical or sporting relationship, such as the whole tracing point saga as it was at the time. If it turns out that there is one, that is something that would cause unhappiness, so there's not much mileage to seek a close relationship with another team from a technical point of view, because that is not allowed. Which is true, on paper, that is absolutely not allowed, but the kind of of question and the concern that's been raised by some parties. And look, James Allison isn't involved so much on that side of the business as maybe a Zach Brown or a Toto Wolff is, because Toto Wolff has certainly had his beef lately with the FIA and their ability to manage things. Toto even said just the other day, well, why are all these individuals, top employees at the FIA, leaving and quitting their positions? Is there something in that? There almost certainly is. Are the FIA actually positioned properly to manage and police these type of potential issues? Sure, the rulebook forbids it, but we know that the rulebook has not stopped Formula One teams in the past from trying to find ways to gain a competitive advantage. So I think that's the concern, but Mercedes say it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. McLaren, though, are certainly on the other side of the spectrum for now, but very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.